I'm Councilwoman Robin Kinich, and I'm one of the two at-large council members who represents the entire city and county of Denver. I want to recognize a few other important city folks that we have in the room. First, I want to recognize Todd Nielsen is here with the Department of Economic Development. Many of our town halls have discussed the fact that a minimum wage should only be the floor, and folks need a whole level of job advancement training to be able to earn higher wages and be able to get themselves into the best job they can. And so that's what that department does. So if you're a job seeker or someone looking for more economic opportunity, Todd is here to talk with you, and he has a table out there, and can you wave, Todd? There's Todd. So if you need some help, please talk to Todd. And I want to welcome Don Mares, who is the head of our Department of Human Services, the safety net programs for the city. I want to make one more ask. ¿Hay alguien que necesita interpretación esta noche? No? Okay, we have interpretation in Spanish. She'll probably hang out for a little bit, but not longer. Before I do the presentation, I want to introduce Sky Stewart, who is here representing the mayor's office and we've been a partnership in this proposal. So Sky?
Great. As Robin said, I'm Sky Stewart. I'm Mayor Hancock's Legislative and Policy Director. Happy to be here tonight on his behalf. Really just want to thank you all for being here. We are very interested in your feedback and expect to hear diverse perspectives tonight. It's very helpful for us to hear those. In just a minute, Councilwoman Kinich is going to walk through some background on this, but I'll repeat something the mayor often says. Denver's been very fortunate to have a robust economy, but one of the things we've recognized is that not everyone benefits from that robust economy. And so that started a number of different conversations. We've been very grateful to partner with Councilwoman Kinich on a number of different efforts around affordable housing and other aspects of helping to improve the lives of Denver residents. And this wage proposal is another next step in that. So happy to turn it over to Councilwoman Kinich to give a little more background, and I'll be here holding down the table by myself for questions.
Thank you so much, Sky. So before we begin, Councilman Hines, welcomed you all, but we are here in the Carla Madison Recreation Center, and I want to make sure you all know this is your building. This was taxpayer funded. It's the newest recreation center, and it belongs to our entire community, and we're really grateful to them for hosting us. So can we just give the Carla Madison staff a hand? Thank you. Just a quick reminder, as you heard, we are being filmed by Channel 8 today. For folks who can't make it in person, we want to make sure that they are equally able to participate in the conversation. So that's why we will ask that you only use the microphone to ask questions in the middle when we get to that portion, and that you turn off all your cell phones and devices that make noise. And then we are also live streaming on Facebook Live. So just wanted you to be aware. And so I would love to know a little bit about who I have in the room, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to set some intentions about the conversation we want to have today. So can I just get some shows of hands? Can you raise your hand if you're someone who's earning at or around minimum wage, and this is a conversation that impacts you on the wage side? Okay, few workers here tonight. Okay, can I see a show of hands if you're here as a business owner or someone who is paying wages in this level, and so you're here as a business owner? Great. Do I have some folks who are active in their registered neighborhood organization or are here kind of more as neighborhood folks tonight? Okay, excellent. And then do I have any nonprofit organizations in the room? Okay, few of those, great. I think I have some labor organizations in the room, folks who represent workers on the workplace, okay, unions. Is there anyone I missed that's here who doesn't feel like they fit in any of those categories and wants to be heard and seen? Okay, well, we have a very diverse group. Faith leaders. Do we have any folks active in their faith community that are here? All right, one faith leader. Thank you for being here. So as we begin, I'm going to invite up Chris Lowell and Christian Jimenez are the ones who did most of the logistics for this. So if we can give them some appreciation for all the setup. So I just want to take a minute or two. Councilman Hines asked us to have a measured conversation tonight, and what we know is that this is very personal, whether it is personal because you are earning these wages and you're struggling to make ends meet, or whether it is personal because you have put your soul and heart and your family's finances into a business. And so let's just throw out a few intentions we have about what a measured conversation looks like. So what are some of the things that we want to do to make sure that our conversation is respectful and sets a an example for our national government in particular. How can we do a good job? Yes?
This is a very emotional thing on both sides. I think we have to just state our intention, facts, and try to leave the emotion out of it and just get our point across so we are heard.
Okay, so it's very emotional. We don't ask people not to feel those emotions, but try to focus on the idea that you have. So can we say, focus on your idea or your point? Okay, that's a good one. Others? This is my warm-up to make sure you're awake during the boring PowerPoint. Yes? Respect others' opinion on the matter. And what does respect look like? When someone else is talking, what are our intentions? No interrupting?
Yeah, no interrupting, let them finish.
Okay, let folks finish. Maybe respectful body language, right? Yeah? Active listening. It's a privilege to be in a room with folks that have all different impacts. Usually in the city council, we get lobbied one by one with folks with their opinion, and so it's a special opportunity to hear the experiences of others. So I really appreciate you all for coming into the space with that. Okay. I think active listening, did we miss that? So what happens if we disagree? Oh yeah, please.
Make sure give a time just at the numbers because it takes time to
So let's be patient with each other. That's a new one. 3, be patient, particularly if someone is, English is their second language. We want to be inclusive. What happens if we disagree? How do we want to disagree? Yes? Politely as possible. What do we want to focus on? Do we want to focus on the speaker, who they are?
No, you want to focus on the issue at hand.
Focus on the issue at hand. So one of the ways that a meeting becomes real heated fast is if we say you or your people or folks like you. And so we want to think about the idea, right? Right, yeah. So we want to focus on the ideas. All right, anyone feel like we're missing anything in the laying the groundwork of the kind of conversation we want to have today? Yes?
respect time and you just don't draw out the conversation.
Okay, so if you are asking a question, we call them comment questions sometimes, but be respectful so that everyone has a chance to speak. And I will be particularly helpful in trying to make sure we hear from differing perspectives. If one side is more talkative than the other, making sure that we have some equal time. Okay? All right. Do we feel like we captured it? All right.
Spelled everything correctly.
All right. Thank you very much for participating. And then do I have your permission as your facilitator this evening to help kind of guide us and remind us of these ground rules if needed? Okay, thank you for that permission. With that, I'm going to go ahead and start the exciting part, which is the PowerPoint. Many of you may have heard a little bit about the proposal in the news, but we think it's important for everyone to have a common grounding in all of the facts. So since 2010, you all know this. Which direction have our median home prices gone? You can just point. They've gone up. So the median home price right now exceeds $400,000 to purchase. The average apartment rent is up 75% to about $1,400 a month. I think that's for a one-bedroom. It's more if you're in a two-bedroom realm. Now, we have taken significant steps to try to address affordable housing. We've ended up in at least conversations describing a lot of those measures, but tens of millions of dollars each year. Initiatives working on our transit agencies work to make transit passes more affordable. And all of these other efforts, these recreation centers, for example, are free to children and free to seniors. So those are all things we've done to try to help to lower the cost of living. But ultimately, in our country's history, we've relied on wages to grow over time. And that is the way that folks have kept up with the cost of living. Something has changed, though, over the prior decades, and that cost of living has not kept up. And there's a visual out in the hallway if you haven't seen it, and I'm sure that it's not a surprise to you. So that was the motivation for this proposal. So earlier in 2019, Denver did not have the permission to raise wages for the entire city. But we do business with a lot of folks. We do business who serve beverages at our arts and venues facilities, like up at Red Rocks and not Pepsi Center, the Coliseum. We have an airport where we have a number of tenants who have leases with us. And all of those folks have employees. And so what we did is we entered into a community partnership conversation about how those who are doing business with our city could earn higher wages to make sure they stayed up with a little closer to the cost of living. And so we came up with 3 increases. So the first went into effect. We passed this in March, and the first wage increase went into effect in July. So it was also a very quick timeline. The first raise was $13 this past July. Then it goes up to $14 in next year, July 1st as well, and then to $15 in July of 2021. And so that applied to probably about between 6,000 and 10,000 workers that got a raise because of that proposal. But that did not affect anyone who didn't have a business relationship or work on city property. So a little bit later, right after we passed that bill, the state legislature passed, I always want to call them ordinances, but they are statutes. And so that statute, House Bill 1210, authorized municipalities to raise wages for all adult workers. And it gave us some rules about we had to follow, so you're going to hear a little bit about that. So this is not a blank piece of paper where we can invent whatever ordinance we want. We have to follow the guidelines that were set by the state. And so we are proposing that we use that law to raise wages beginning January 1st of 2020. And we announced this just in early September. So the way the state statute is written is that wages must apply to all adult employees and emancipated minors. Those are folks no longer living with their parents. And so the state does not really allow us to have special wages for special groups of people. A few cities, not most in fact, but a few cities have done different wages for small and large employers, particularly Seattle and the state of New York. But most places are similar in that it applies to all adults, and so that is what the state legislature required of us. We have a state minimum wage, and that minimum wage, did I miss that slide? I don't know where it went. But the state minimum wage is going to be $12 on January 1st of 2020. And because that is in our state constitution, each year when the state minimum wage is adjusted, it happens on January 1st. And so the state legislature said, we don't want employers to be confused about different dates of when the wages go into effect, so we're going to require that they happen on that same date, January 1st. So that's partially why we're having a conversation about January, is because it's in the law. And then they said you can only increase wages by $1.75 or 15%, whatever is higher. And so once we're over that $12 threshold on January 1st, that 15% is the figure that we are cap. And then it also required that a tip credit for food and beverage workers matches the state tip credit. And what that means is right now that tip credit is $3.02 at the state. And so if you are earning, for example, $13.80 is our proposed first wage. The tip person who receives tips doing food and beverage work would earn $10.78, and then their tips would need to make up the other few dollars. So that's what a tip credit means. It's like you minus the tip credit from the wage. So here is the proposal that we're here to discuss today, $13.80 on January 1st, 2020. So reminder that state minimum wage will be at $12, but this takes us even higher here in Denver. And then it would go to $15.87 on January 1st of 2021. Both of those are maximum 15% increases. So those are the most that we could raise the wage under the law. We do have the flexibility to go less than that. And then starting in January 1st of 2022, the wage would go up by the Consumer Price Index. This is a fancy federal measurement for inflation. It's an imaginary basket of goods. You go out and fill that basket of goods with things people buy, clothes and food. It does not include housing, and then that is a measurement. And that that is the same measurement that the state minimum wage uses, so that's one reason we picked it, so that it's consistent. Another reason that we picked it is because it's often used in other government programs. And so we like to kind of use something that's standard. It's calculated each year by the federal government and then provided back to us for our metropolitan area. So the wage would continue to go up each year, but that amount varies. It's usually about 2.5%. And so it's worth between 30 and 40 cents a year in the typical year. And so the idea is these first two wages, I think I have a fancy thing. The first two wages, $13.80 and $15.87, are a little bit of catch-up wages for the long wait that workers have had with wage stagnation. And then the consumer price index increases afterwards are a little bit about keeping up so that that wage keeps up with the cost of living from where it begins at the prior step. And then I think we've covered all that. So the proposal right now that is out there for community comment is a complaint-based system, and the auditor's office is the one that would take any complaints. They already do wage enforcement for our city contractors, and they also do wage investigations for construction contractors who are paid something called the prevailing wage in our city. So they have a lot of experience with this. And then we are going to require employers to keep some employment records for 3 years so that if there is a complaint, you have the records to show what you paid folks and help us resolve that. And then if you start to see that there's a pattern going on in a single place of business, you've had a few complaints, you can go ahead and audit or check all of the wages to see if the problem is more widespread than just the workers that they've heard from. It also allows for a private right of action, which allows a worker to go and file in court to get their back wages if they prefer to do that rather than having the government agency take the lead. And then there are penalties for non-payment, and they escalate the more complaints that you have. So the idea is maybe once you make a mistake, and there is a good faith error exception. So if someone has a first violation and it was an error, they can, as long as they make those workers whole, they will not be penalized. But if they have multiple offenses, then the penalties will increase. And so the goal here is first and foremost to make workers whole with the wages they're owed, and then to deter folks from future violations. And then there are some penalties for failing to keep the records that are required or for providing them when you need to. So we get the question all the time, and hopefully you saw the map out in the hallway, but who else has done this? So there are already 13 cities and counties that are at $15 today across the country, and then there are an additional 12 cities and counties that have passed legislation to reach $15 an hour in the coming years. And so, so we will be in a family of more and more cities, but we also have entire states that are going to be at $15 an hour in the coming years. So on our proposal, we would be there in 2021, and a cluster of other places will be arriving around the same time or right after us. So in terms of market competitiveness with peer cities, we have a good cohort of peer cities that we looked at. So one of the questions that also comes up is what will happen. And so we hear a lot from individual businesses about the struggles or the adjustments that they might have to make in order to handle these wage increases. And each of those stories is real and individual to that business. But when we take a step up and we look at what happens in a whole economy, what we find, and the longer we have these policies in effect, so states have been raising their minimum wage for a while, but cities have been, a little newer to the game. The research is starting to form a real strong consensus that there are no impacts in terms of major job loss that occur, and there are very minimal price increases that occur. So it's not that prices go up by 20 or 30%. These meta studies have looked at something like 277 jurisdictions, some of them. One did a comparison of cities that had a higher minimum wage right next door to a county that did not have a higher minimum wage. And all of this information in these studies are available if you want a handout after the presentation. You can get one from our table in the back, or it's also available on our website. So none of this means that this is how it works for each individual business. So what happens, generally speaking, is every dollar that a worker worker earns at these wage levels gets spent in the economy. And so while some employers may say, listen, I'm going to do some adjustments and I'm going to take a few folks from full-time to part-time, or I'm going to make adjustments here, the spending that comes from 100,000 workers, which is how many we have, we'll get there in a second, but 100,000 workers with $1 or $2 more per hour to spend creates an enormous purchasing power that creates other new jobs. And so that may not be in the same firm, it might not be in the exact same job, but overall, what we see is that restaurants continue to be about the same size of an economy after these increases, even to the tune of 10, 20 years later. And what we see is that there are overall higher retention rates. So workers stay longer in jobs when they have higher wages. And so some of the costs that businesses absorb are made up by less cost in terms of advertising jobs, having people paid to train, having duplicate training while you have someone who's new on the job shadowing someone who's on it. You're paying 2 people instead of 1. Those are real costs. And so this is kind of the national evidence. So who would be impacted? We asked our partners at the Bell Policy Center and Economic Policy Institute to do some modeling, and it looks like there are about 100,000 workers who live and work in Denver. So we are talking about Denver residents here who would be getting a raise by the time we got to 1587. It's about 74,000 who would be getting a raise in the first year. So 3/4 of folks that would get a raise would get it right away in that first year because they're earning less than $13.80 an hour. So does that make up for the entire cost of living in Denver? No, it doesn't. But it brings people a little closer. And so as we talk about how much is enough and how much is too much, these are the costs of what it costs to live. So we are already kind of here for 1 adult. This also, I think, gets us close for a family with 2 adults. It also brings us closer. So these are the wages that folks need to earn. So it's not that we believe the minimum wage is enough for everybody. The idea is that it helps to improve your quality of life. It may allow you to take a day off to go to the doctor, may allow you to spend a little more time with your kids, and maybe help you on that path. Maybe you do want to do some training or education, but you can't do it because you're working 2 jobs. So hopefully you can, cut down to 1. So those are some of the differences we're talking about, but we know there's a long way to go, and that's why it's so important we do that workforce training and all of those other things I mentioned to get folks into higher paying jobs. So this is an important racial justice policy. I think that when you ask us, why did we propose to do this right away in 2020? What was the urgency? And this is it. Fully 1/2 of Latino workers in the city and county of Denver are earning less than $15.87. So 1/2, 1 out of every 2. And more than 1/3 of African Americans, 38% of African Americans are earning less than $15.87. So if we want to have a next generation of Latino business owners and African American business owners, and we want that wealth building to be shared among our entire community equitably, this wage gap is a huge barrier that we are working to address. It also is disproportionately going to benefit women. So you see here that it will benefit 30% of women in the city would get a raise under this. So these are important motivations of why this proposal is being brought forward and the urgency. So you are at the 4th of 6 town halls. We have also had dozens of open houses. Some of you have been to them, where we answer questions in a smaller format, away from cameras and microphones, with businesses and with different sectors. We have a meeting coming up for nonprofit organizations on November 1st. So if you're with a nonprofit organization and you did not get that invite this week, please talk to one of the staff in the back and they can help you get that information. We are, of course, taking phone calls, individual meetings, emails, and all of the types of input. But these town halls were important to make sure that folks had a chance to kind of be heard in a setting with their neighbors and with our district council members who have been very, eagerly following the conversation. So This is not a bill that has been introduced to the city council, and that's really important to understand. In Denver, we have a culture, when the mayor and I have partnered, we have had a culture of releasing draft bills and providing a serious amount of time for folks to look at that and comment on it before we take it to the council and start having formal meetings and votes. So that's the period we're in now. We will be making any changes to the draft ordinance, the final few days of October, first few days of November, and begin a conversation with the city council at the committee. The Finance and Governance Committee is the committee that hears this, and those meetings would begin the first week of November, the first full week. I think it's the 6th of November. And it's a 4-week council process, and there is also public input opportunity throughout that process. So here's our email addresses. You can also pick up business cards or phone numbers if those are better for you. But we look forward to continuing the dialogue. You might have feedback that you percolate on after tonight, and you may have other ideas or thoughts that you want to share afterwards, and we welcome that feedback. Before I open it up to questions, I want to see if Sky has anything you would like to add, just as an overall comment.
No, I think you covered it, and happy to hear from everybody in the room and take any questions.
Great. So if I want to refresh folks, if you are able, please come to the microphone and take your questions from there. If you are unable to, please wave down Chris Lowell. He's with the white shirt here, and he will help make an accommodation for you. But if you're able to, please come to the mic. Thank you. And if you would like to share your name or anything about yourself, please feel free, just to help us know who we're hearing from, but it's not required.
I actually spoke too soon. I do want to make sure that people who are standing get a chance to sit. So if you want to come fill in and people make room before we start taking comments. Sorry, ma'am.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yes, I can. The contact information slide? Okay, thank you. So yeah, please, if you're standing in the back, please feel free to come find a seat. There's a couple in the front, and I promise I don't bite. Okay, thank you. All right, please, go ahead.
I'm Judy Trumpeter, a resident of Uptown. I'm in support of an increase in the minimum wage. I am concerned, though, that your proposal will increase it for 2 years and then effectively knock it back to not keeping up with inflation, because what the federal government is calling inflation right now leaves out, as you mentioned, housing, among other things, and that's the killer here in town. So I think this will be helpful to people for a couple of years and then not be helpful after that, and that's a concern.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. And I won't respond unless there's a question or something that I think we have that's new. Otherwise, we're just hearing from you. Please come to the microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Pedro. I'm work as a janitor here in downtown for 11 years, almost 12. I know I make a little bit, $12.50, $12.75 an hour. Today I go to rent an apartment here in Denver, and when I be at the office, they say I need to pay $3,000 with my first month of rent and fees, and the down payment is $3,000. I make $1,800 an hour, and I guess $15 is not enough. I'm by myself. I'm just thinking on the families who has kids, wives, husband, and everything, because with $1,800 a month is not enough to get one room. For me, it's really, really hard right now because I have until the last day of this month to get an apartment. So I'm just got to get some loans. They loan me $400 to pay a little bit more. So I'm just thinking we need to think about the future. This city right now, the rent is really, really, really hard because all the brand new buildings, and they want to profit. They don't want to help people. They don't want to help poor people like me and like my coworkers over there. Also, I know this is really, really hard for you, but just thinking on what we're doing to live, and don't go to drop things to get bad things. We work because we like to live our life better. So please, just thinking on get affordable houses, affordable apartments, and erase a little bit more on the years coming, because this is not enough to provide for families.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that feedback. Yes, please.
I think that reminded me of one other thing. So we're right next to District 10. Colorado Public Radio just yesterday came out with an article about the expensive zip codes in Colorado in which to rent. The top 2 zip codes are both in Denver's District 10. So this is an area that is some of the most expensive areas to rent in the state. So thank you for your comment, and I just wanted to give a little extra context.
Thank you very much. And I think in our appendix, we might have a visual of the housing. This is the visual of what the median wage is here in yellow. The median rent is in black, and the median home sale price is in gray. So most minimum wage workers are probably not eligible for home ownership unless it's through Habitat for Humanity or someone who can really, really get deep with their affordability. So that black rent line is the one that we're chasing, and these are averages. We heard a story about individual experiences are different, right? No one lives in averages. You go out and you look for an actual apartment. So thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. My name is Melanie McPhee, and I'm a longtime resident of Denver, 4th generation, Colorado. But I've been forced to move to Wheat Ridge, and I'm a senior, and I'm a baby boomer, and there's many of us seniors who are not adjusting to not only the terrible price increases of housing, but the low wages. And I remember some of my friends and I worked in hotels, and we made more in the 1980s than people that I know that are in their 30s or 40s and have to move back home with their parents because they can't afford a place of their own. And they're bringing their kids, so that's hard on the people that are my age, that are their parents, if they do have a house and they've been established for a while. And even people who've had a house for a while, the price of the taxes keeps going up, and a lot of people are going to have to forgo their houses or move to a smaller one. So I'm all for the wage increase, and I think that we're only going to do the citizens of Denver and Colorado justice by allowing the rent increases as quickly as possible.
So this has been very common in all of our town halls, the conversation about housing, and it is feedback we take to heart. Our goal here tonight is to mostly focus on the minimum wage, but because I know that folks are in need of resources, I just want to share a few information points. If anyone is in crisis and about to lose their housing and needs emergency options, I encourage them to call 211, which is the United Way, and they have access to making referrals for very emergency resources. If someone is struggling with making a rent payment right now, facing eviction, or making a utility payment, and they're a low-income homeowner, we have emergency rental assistance and emergency homeowner assistance, and you can call 311 to get that support. And I mentioned we have someone from the Office of Economic Development, Todd Nielsen, here. He is a workforce specialist, but I'm sure that he can also direct you to the whole list of housing resources that we have in the city. So if you are in need of some assistance, I want you to know that there are some places you can go for those resources. And I'm going to ask that we try to focus our conversation as much as possible on the minimum wage. But I know that the question has already come up, and it has every time, can't we do something to control rents? And the story is that we cannot. The state of Colorado prohibits local governments from putting any limitations on rent increases. We also can't require developers to include a portion of rental when they build new rental buildings. We can't require them to build affordable rental. That is also prohibited by the state of Colorado. We have, however, charged them a fee every square foot that they build. That was a partnership that the Mayor Hancock and I passed in 2016, and it was doubled in 2018, the overall fund, not the fee on development. Those dollars are going to build new affordable housing at the rate of about 1,200 homes a year, and additional 5,000 folks are getting assistance each year. So this is, because I know it's so important to everyone, I wanted to share a little of that information before we return to the conversation on the minimum minimum wage. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thanks. It's Peter Marcus. It's really cool to be in this building. I was a reporter for a number of years. I covered Carla Madison. You're not supposed to get attached to your subjects as a reporter, but she was amazing, so it's cool to see this come to fruition. I'm actually here, again, it's Peter Marcus. I'm here with the company Terrapin Care Station. We have, it's a cannabis chain. We have retail and cultivation operations in Denver, about 250 employees, and we're here to say that we support this effort. When we heard that you were running this proposal, we pulled our finance team together, we pulled our CEO together, the owner, and we went through the books and we saw what this would cost us. I'm not gonna lie, it's going to come at a cost to us as a business, but it's a cost that we looked and we realized we can absorb, more importantly, because it's the right thing to do. We're looking to retain our employees, and the best way we can retain our employees is to ensure that they have a living wage in this city. And when we retain our employees, it means that we increase our institutional knowledge as an organization. It means that skill sets go up. It means that experience is there. It means that we'll be better as an organization. And so, as I mentioned, and by the way, when it comes to the cannabis industry, there are actually some parallels on the retail side to restaurants and things of that nature. Our employees, bud tenders, as we call them on the retail level, are tipped. So the carve out for the tip is part of, not carve out.
Well, it does not apply. It only applies to food and beverage workers.
Right, but I'm saying that as somebody who has tipped workers, we understand what they go through and we understand how the tips work, and so we figured that taking into account what everyone is making, going to $15 an hour is going to be an equal opportunity for everybody.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pause for just a moment. We have some guests who just joined us, so let's please direct them to some open seats. If you have an open seat, will you wave someone up there? Please, let's take a moment. We want you all to be comfortable.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Peter. So we have a line of folks. I want to make sure that if there are some folks with concerns that we hear from you too. So in my interest of balance, I will take a few more and make sure if no one has a concern, but there's someone here with one, to call you up to make sure we have some equal time. So please.
My name is DC Coulon. I'm here representing Metro Caring and the city of Denver as well. I think what you're doing is great, but I think, as you spoke earlier and you said we know we're a little bit behind, so we're trying to do this. I just want you to hear me out on this. I'll be as quick as I can. It's a little too little, a little too late. And even though you are doing that, and it is a good thing, the minimum wage needs to start with 15 this year. And I know you said you can't do that because of state laws and all that, so maybe we can make some changes there as well. Folks can't live off $15 an hour. They can't live off 11, they can't live off 12. People can come into the city from out of the city and work at a business, then they have to go out of the city. So they don't put their money back into that business, and that business does not grow because of that. We also have folks that I see every day that come into Metro Caring that are in a dilemma because they're about to lose housing because of their minimum wage. And you stated with 211 laws and everything. So let me make this clear. 211 can help you, but we also have a list a mile long for buildings that are being built for low incomes and subsidized housing right now. And there's a waiting list, and that waiting list is full on all of those. So it's great that we have the resources, but at this point in time, there's not a place for those folks to live. Everyone does not need to go to the workforce. There are a lot of people who have the education and stuff. They just can't live off $15 an hour. And this country has kept people down by not paying them more. And, you talk about making programs for people. And let's make programs for low-income people, and let's make this and that. But when you do that, the government gets a big chunk and the people don't. So why make a program? Why don't you just pay people and eventually get that up to a living wage, which should be right about $22 to $24 an hour? Then people will pull themselves right up, right by themselves, and they don't need a program. Because people come in all the time, and it breaks my heart. I have to sit there and listen to this, which I don't mind. That's what I do. But just to try to give them the resources they need in a day's time and work with them, I worry what's going to happen to them when they leave, because they may not have a place to live. They may not have a place to go. So please take this into account. And if there's any way you can get this up to $15 an hour, please do it now. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm Regina Jackson, and I know that we live in an oligarchy. You know it, and everybody in here knows it. Business has not been paying their share for years. We need to have good government that stops it, that says if you're going to do business in this city, you are going to pay people a living wage. Every person who gets up every morning and goes to work needs a living wage. We all know that. Let's stop letting business get away with murders. They can pay CEOs $65 million a year, and they can't pay a living wage. Stop it. I'm tired of the nonsense. I'm tired of the bullshit. Let's do what we need to do for human beings.
I appreciate the passion and the heartfelt. I just want to remind everyone, one, we're on Channel 8, so for the children at home. And then also, we have a diversity of businesses in our community. Some are big, some are small. Hopefully we'll hear from that full mix, but just wanted to make sure that we are inclusive of all the folks who may be in the room.
Hi, my name is Zach Shako. I am
A little closer to the microphone. You're so tall.
I know. How do you? Okay. How
There you
about
go.
that? Can you take it up?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Zach Shako. I am a student down at the Auraria campus here in Denver. Thank you for considering raising the wage here. I think $13.80 is ridiculously low still. $20 an hour should be the minimum wage here in Denver, in one of the most expensive cities in the country. I want to come at you as a recent graduate from Denver South High School. If you guys didn't know, South is the 9th most diverse school in the entire country, and that means there are a lot of immigrants there. What people like to say about the minimum wage is it's just entry-level jobs, and it's not for everyone. But what I saw when I was at South High School is students who were helping support their families, people who just came to this country that are helping to put food on the table. I was fortunate enough to just be able to worry about my education, but that's not the case for everyone. So we need to be working as hard as possible to make $20 an hour the minimum wage. We need to put this ordinance on the table now, and I hope that you really consider the working families. I think the businesses are doing excellent in this city. Let's worry about the working families. Thank you.
So can you tell me your name again, please? Zach. So Zach reminded me of something I didn't talk about that we should flag for you. So the state law requires the wage be paid to all adults and emancipated minors, but it is silent on what happens with those under age 18 who are still living with their parents and are not emancipated. And so I flag that because it's a choice that we have as policymakers. The state, for example, has a minimum wage that can be paid 15% less to someone who is a minor under the age of 18. And so we could, in theory, have a discussion about a differential wage for those under age 18 in Denver. So it's something that I hope that folks will give us feedback on if you think that that's good, bad. There is also the idea of maybe just doing an exception for youth who are in youth employment training programs. A lot of those are run by nonprofits that are have a very difficult time funding those programs. And so the idea that we don't want to see them go away. So I want to just flag one of the areas where we do have some flexibility. And I also want to say, if you have feedback that you are not comfortable, I'm looking for my staff team. Christian, we have some note cards, yes? So can we walk around with some note cards? If folks would prefer to share their questions by note card, or if you would prefer to just give us the feedback as you leave today, we will also take that feedback. You do not have to use the microphone and talk on camera if you don't want to. So everybody is welcome to do that. So just wave your hand if you'd like a note card. And now I'll go to our next speaker. Thank you.
My name is Tukdam Azbaha. I live in this area. and I work at the airport, Denver International Airport, since 2014. I just want to explain how it's affecting Denver economic crisis for working families. So 2010, since 2004, I work at Denver International Airport. 2010, I lost my house because of the crisis. And then I go apartment, I couldn't afford it. I still working minimum wages. But 2014, I get housing because of I have a kids. So this minimum wages, it's affected me. And then my kids, they've been in fear because of if I lose this job, and at the same time, the money, the minimum wage I got, it's not enough. My son, he's 14, he start doing dog babysitting, different things instead of eating, relaxing, and sleeping. But I work full-time, it's not still enough. Today, I've been in my company for 3 years. They doesn't pay us the differential. So we did class action today. So the companies, they are taking our laborers and then our money, and then we doesn't get what we deserve. I just want to have a house. I want to work, and then I just want to have a house, relax in Denver. It's a beautiful city. So I just want to relax, and then my kids, they have to get what they deserve. So even this minimum wages, I've been since 2015 in the street about the minimum wages with my kids. My kids, they've been everywhere with me. Because of this minimum wages, I have to go up. Because of the city economy is higher, but our minimum wages is down. We doesn't get nothing. The richer they got richer, the poorest we got poorer. So we have to deserve more than $13 an hour. So it's not fair. So you guys, I've been in the city council, as you know me, most of you, and then I've been in the street. It's not fair for us. We work hard. We have to get what we deserve. That's what the minimum wage is. It's very important. $13 is not still enough for us. Thank you.
My name is Nancy Bertman, and I've lived here since 1970 and worked here since '74. I retired and discovered I couldn't survive on that, so I went back to work part-time. You made a comment, and I don't know if I misunderstood it, that this hasn't come before City Council yet, and you said that they have the opportunity not to accept the full amount that you said. What are the, maybe you could speak to that?
Yeah, so there's actually 2 decision points. So as the sponsors, the mayor and myself will make a decision on what final bill to put to the council, and so we may very well make adjustments based on the feedback. This has come very fast for folks who already developed their budget for next year, and it is a big leap because many of them are paying $11.10 an hour now, so we may be considering making adjustments to the wage amount to find the balance that we can between the need and the small businesses, particularly in our economy, who don't have the corporate CEOs that some folks are talking about. So that's a consideration. There are also other pieces of how the bill is written that we have changes we can make. So the first decision is what we put in the bill we take to the City Council, so it could change. And then the second piece is that as the council goes through the discussion, it is a democratic process. So the bill can be amended in the committee, it can be amended on the floor. So our hope is that we find the best possible bill, and our colleagues are agreeing with it, but it's a democratic process, and so it is very possible that the bill could change. What cannot happen is the wage cannot go higher because we do not have the legal authority. So that I can guarantee you because it is not legal.
I understand that, but then there's the chance we could end up with less than what you're telling us, which is very disconcerting because I think we're all in here because we are having trouble making ends meet and we're not getting paid enough, and there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Where, you know, all of us there's more days in the month than money we have. There's no place we can go. And Denver is a city that should be able to provide for its people. And that's why we're here. And so I'm hoping that you can bring our voice to the City Council and let them hear our cries and just at least give us the full amount that is on the table now. I mean, I know we're not the only city struggling with this, but this is very disheartening. I live in an apartment, and I've seen so many people leave because they raised the rents. My last question is this. You say Denver cannot regulate rents. Is there any way that can be changed?
Your state legislature could change that. So I refer to my friends across the park in the state capitol. That is in their hands.
So we'd have to, okay.
And a number of us have signed on to opinion pieces and letters urging them to do that. The city of Denver has supported them giving us the authority to debate that locally without committing what we do with that authority. We always believe it's best for us to make local decisions. Our city is not the same as Lyman. It's not the same as Grand Junction or Colorado Springs. So it's important for us to be able to manage things the best we can locally. So perhaps that's something everyone in the room can agree on. And if so, that's a great place to take the conversation is to the
Okay.
state legislature. Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Yes. Next. And I want to just warn folks, so we have about 30 minutes left. We have to stop at exactly 7:30. We then can mill around and take a minute, have some more dialogue, but we need to be out of the building by 8 o'clock on the nose. So that's the schedule. So if folks can be short, so we make sure that we can hear from everyone, that is very helpful. And then I want to just say, after this speaker, we're going to go to someone who's not able to come to the mic. Oh, yeah, okay, let's do that. Yeah, do one. We're taking some card questions. And then after Sky does this question, can we take the handheld mic to the person who can't come up? And then we'll go back to some cards. Then we'll go to you. Thank you for your patience.
Sure. We have a question about how we would address how raising the minimum wage to $15.87 is tied to rents. So rents and home prices have continued to skyrocket even with stagnated wages since 2014. Why would they not continue to climb as wages climb? Seattle did this and median home purchase price increased. So a concern about how rents will be impacted and how that will impact the same people we're trying to help. So we have looked into the research. As it's been pointed out, the rents have continued to rise even when wages have stagnated. So those are really tied to market prices, not to wages. It's really based on supply and demand and how much there is in the market in terms of the housing. So we have a lot of new people moving into Denver, a lot of product being built to house those new people. It's really more related to that, to those economic market forces, than it is related to wages. And that's why we've continued to see home prices increase even while wages have stagnated. So we don't anticipate that the wage increase will impact rents. That will continue to be a factor of the market. If you want to add anything else, Councilwoman?
No, I think that what we know is keeping wages flat has not kept housing prices down. So we've tried it, it doesn't work. So the question is, do we try something different? All right, so for our speaker with the handheld mic, thank you, over here, okay.
Hello, my name is Anthony Miller, and you answered that gentleman question that talked about what he was missing, and you said there's
Mic right by your mouth, thank you.
You said there's emergency help. Well, I want to tell you something. I came here today to speak on minimum wage, but I want to tie something in with it because I try to keep my personal business out of these things. But sometimes you have to put things in perspective. So I'm a veteran, 12 years military. I got 4 bullet holes in me.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I came back to the United States, and I've lived in New York City all my life. But in 2013, my son and his wife moved here with their 4 children. She had a job with Verizon out in Highland Ranch, I believe that is. And when they went to look for an apartment, they needed to make 2.5 times or 3 times what the rent was. And of course, they weren't. So they got homeless. And I'm packing up to come here to rescue them because that's what I do with my children, you know? And January 14th, I never forgot it, I called 211 for them. I even came here and went to social service to see if they could help them. And they didn't. There was a Salvation Army on Federal, and by the time I was able to use my experience I used to work for the Salvation Army in New York. I was able to get them to let them in, but 4 days later, my 6-month-old grandson died. He died because all these safety nets that we put up wasn't really there. You know, there's not enough resources. And income, in America, this is a free system, right? And the small business got to earn some money, but people have to live too. I didn't go all the way to Asia to fight, and I'm walking with a cane and I have no feet. And I'm not telling you because I want your sympathy. I'm letting you know that I didn't go there to do that, to come back to see my grandson died. Because the people who are supposed to help them says that they have safety nets and emergency system, it doesn't work. So if these people can't earn enough money to at least pay that 2.5, you know, you got to look at that part. You say what you're doing, the business people say what they have, but that man that got up there and that lady, there's a reality. That's theory. Let's deal with reality. I know what you're limited to. You understand? But people are dying out there, you know, and when it happened to my grandson, I decided I would take, Denver's not my place, but I decided I'd take a role in Denver. I joined up with Metro Caring, and what they do, it touched me. It touched me so much that I've decided to go in my pocket and help. But the point is, there's nothing I can do about rent. There's nothing I can do about the small businesses. All I can ask you to do is you won't think of the people that you think is just trying to get over. Think of the little children who spend all their time in the cold. You know, these shelters, they kick them out after a certain period of time. You got to go find a job, you know, and they got kids. So they walk the street with the kids, and that cold hit them hard. I remember the day my grandson died. But what I'm saying to you is, I came here and I gave them the money to go and get their apartment. But you know, it was too late. The same day I gave them the money, they called and my grandson died from cold exposure. He was 6 months old. So I urge you, I urge everybody here, you know, when you're talking and saying all this stuff, just think there's theory and then there's reality. You know, I can't eat theory. I can't eat what you put together and say, this is what the study is, as Chris has done, you know, because that's just a study. All I'm going to ask you to do, you have told us all about your limitations with the state, and yes, we as a people, as a group in this room, including the small businesses, you need to get off your butts and go to the state office and demand changes. Do you understand that? You come to these meetings all the time and you ask for the same darn thing. Do you understand that? Stop doing that. Government by the people. Now,
Okay, we got it.
can we get 15, hold on.
Yep.
Hold on.
I just got to make sure I'm equal
I
here.
understand that,
so
and they will get
thank
their
you.
turn. Can we get $15 an hour? And then what I want from the city council and the mayor's office is that once we reach that stage, don't give me the CPI. You see, I'm a veteran pensioner. Sometimes our CPI raise is 0.02%. Try living with that. So please do me a favor, and the rest of the people in here who are suffering, take that minimum wage every year and consider it for 15%. At least we can maintain a parity. Otherwise, all the great things you're doing will fall apart, and one day Denver will be a ghost town. Okay.
Thank you very much. So we have 20 minutes left, and my goal is to get through everyone. And so I want to remind us, we do need to respect time and make sure that we allow that everyone gets a chance to speak. Every story is powerful. If you don't get time to share your whole story because of our time limitations, we encourage you to contact us and figure out another way to do it. So we're going to go to the line, and then we'll go to the other written questions. Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name's Lisa Maria, and I'm going to try not to mumble because I had a long night drinking with friends because we can't afford to go to the local bars, so we split bottles of a drink. And my friend I'm with can attest to that, who's moving to Greeley in her 40s because she can't afford to live in Cap Hill anymore. But what I'm really here to talk about is I don't make minimum wage. I'm a hairstylist and I make commission, but my clients make minimum wage. And when they can't come in to receive my service, I lose out financially, and I can't afford to live here. And it's been tough. I know this firsthand. I'm an economic migrant from San Francisco and arrived here December 2017 because I lost everything because I couldn't afford to live there. A tech company bought the building my salon was in. I lost my house. My landlord wanted to raise the rents, and I'm scared that now I'm in Denver, that's gonna happen to me. And I already have lost 5 clients in the past year who took jobs outside of Colorado because they just couldn't afford to live in Denver. And another thing, please raise the minimum wage. You know, I need my clients who live close to my salon to be able to afford to come to me so I can stay here and enjoy all the wonderful things that Denver provides. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one that's more of a comment than a question, but I will read it so that everyone can hear this. As the federal government moves to increase minimum salary for overtime exemption to $35,000 approximately, this person's employer is now switching off of salary to hourly to avoid paying that livable wage. Please pass this increase in minimum wage or better to prevent more employer exploitation of labor.
Next.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Canales, and I've been a resident of Colorado for almost 20 years now. I'm a financial analyst in the metro area, and there's not a lot I can add to this topic that hasn't been said by everyone that's experiencing the minimum wage. But what I do want to say is I was reading into studies about this before coming to this town hall and noticed that the National Low-Income Housing Coalition did a study pretty much saying that $25.33 is what is needed by 2 adults to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Denver. That would mean that a single mother would need to work 91 hours on the minimum wage a week to be able to support their children. I personally would not be able to balance a budget on the minimum wage. I wouldn't be able to balance my own budget on $15 an hour. We need more, and I urge everybody in here to really look into our state legislature, because all of these limitations set upon us are disproportionately affecting all of these corporations, companies, real estate developers that are coming into our city and cannibalizing on employees. So I urge you to do that, and I urge you to do what you can do more for these people.
Next. Do you have more questions, Sky?
We don't have any other questions. Okay. I'll just say, DC, we got your comment about talking about youth education, and one of us will be happy to chat with you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Adam Allman, and I own the Game Lounge right down the street here at the corner of Colfax and Eudora. And, you know, as somebody who's in the restaurant industry, I understand you know, the concern about this tip minimum wage, but we have a thriving restaurant industry in Denver, and it's going to continue to thrive. And if anything, it will mean that, you know, restaurants that have reasonably priced items like mine will do much better, because there's going to be a lot more people that will be able to go out and eat and have a good night out. So anyway, I thank you for doing this, and I hope that we can, you know, figure it out. I think it's through the state that we need to figure out that tipped wage thing, actually. So it's not even a city
The city
thing.
cannot change the tipped wage under the current law. That is correct.
So, but anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm going to upset a bunch of people. So my name is Ryan Cobbins. I own Coffee at the Point in the Five Points neighborhood. I think what the city's doing with minimum wage is aggressive. Our pay at what we pay our staff, we try to be overly aggressive. And so right now, we pay our folks an average of $2 above what minimum wage is. And so we just did a $1 increase last week, knowing that this was coming around. And with unemployment being roughly 2%, a little above 2%, just the jockeying for staff is important. We plan on doing another increase pretty soon. What I feel on a regular basis is the how to pay for it. And all the articles that I've read in the last 10 months about these legacy businesses going out of business that have been in business for 20 plus years, in every article they reference the rising cost of labor. And so this may be for the legislature. What I would like to do would be, and prices will increase. What I paid last year for a case of tomatoes is $12, $15. I pay $25 to $30 now. I'd like to propose for small businesses that make $1 million or less, like my coffee shop, to have a sales tax moratorium so that I can increase prices without that being felt to customers. So customers would still pay the same amount. However, I can make a little bit more of a margin. And when I say I can make a little bit more, like I'm the last one to get a check. I've lost all my hair in this process, right? It's not coming back. And so what we could do to ease that piece for small businesses, they're all businesses that hoard money. I would argue the small businesses that I know of are very socially conscious and very community driven and don't hoard money and are just trying to fight to figure out how to make it to the next day. And so that was
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Dr. Gary Van Genderen. I'm a dentist in Denver, and I'm also a Medicaid provider. My concern about this is that the whole government, state, and city aren't together on this, and we cannot raise our prices. We are legally stuck to their fee schedule. So right now, for a 6-month exam, we get paid $22, and that includes the doctor's pay, the assistant's pay, the front desk that scheduled them, and all the equipment and overhead for all that. And the cleaning pays $40, and we have to pay all those people. And all those people also get paid when the patients don't show up. So one of the things that really needs to happen is I think the city needs to work with the state about possibly getting a separate fee schedule for Denver for Medicaid providers, or you might end up with an exodus of Medicaid providers and they just drop all those patients because it's a loss for each patient at the increased minimum wage without an increase in the fee schedule. Thanks.
Thank you for raising our awareness on that issue. Is there anyone else still in line? I'm not sure if folks are in line or in the back. Come on closer so I can see. And I just want to do a time check. We have about 14 minutes left. So if you have a need for a card, can we get a show of hands if anyone needs a card? Great. Okay. One right there. Thank you. Okay. Isis.
Hi, my name is Isis. I'm with Colorado People's Alliance. I'm an economic justice community organizer. Wanted to make a quick comment in reply to what was just said. I was part of the team that worked on the law at the state level to get this passed, and Medicaid providers were explicitly mentioned in that bill, and there's a process for Medicaid providers to apply for more of a refund, or however it's dealt with in the budget system, but there is something already written into the state law to address that concern. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I have a quick little thing that I wrote up. Despite the support that this ordinance has with community members and workers all over the city, including those that are represented here, some businesses, of course, are decrying the measure as being too much, too soon. As we saw, there's not really many who are coming up and saying that, so thank you to those who did come up and talk about it. But I know that they are contacting you all at City Council. So they're saying that, everything that these the 1380 by 2020 is too much of a burden, that 1587 is just unthinkable. But among us who sit here, as was already mentioned, we know that it might be too little, too late. We have so many stories here at COPA. That's like one of the main things that we do is we talk to folks and we bring out these stories that, we're hearing today. So like me personally, I know families pushed out of neighborhoods that they lived in for generations. I know an old woman who was fired after having a stroke and couldn't afford to live anywhere near Denver anymore. I have friends who work 2, 3, 4 jobs to make ends meet. I personally have experienced homelessness while working in a hotel and going to school full time. At COPA, we have many members who work so much that they don't have time to engage civically in this process. Many of them immigrants and folks of color. As we mentioned already, this is a racial justice issue on multiple levels. What I know is that as working class people, we are tired. We are tired of knowing that owners, especially those owners of larger businesses, as was already mentioned, make more money than us while they're doing a fraction to none of the work in a lot of cases. The state has given the city a tool to provide a material improvement to the lowest officially paid among us. If this council takes seriously its charge to represent the residents of Denver, it is going to need to prove that it's going to take steps to mitigate the violence of poverty that we're seeing in our communities. We at COPA are looking forward to continuing to work towards an economy that works for all of us by ensuring that this measure is passed and effectively enforced. So that's one of the things that we mentioned that we discussed earlier. We want proactive enforcement. We want to make sure that the auditor's office has enough funding to actually enforce these wage increases. And we invite you all to join us in that. Please reach out to me if you're interested in learning more, getting more involved in this campaign moving forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have 2 more speakers, and so I would say, and we have another card. So I'm going to do speaker and then cards, and then we should be probably right at time. We may not get to the 3rd speaker in line. I just want to warn you. So
I'm going to be very quick. I came to Denver in 1968 from Birmingham, Alabama. I grew up there doing segregation. I saw all of that. But in 1973, our ex-governor Ford brought forth what they call rent freeze. When was that taken off the legislation? What year was that removed?
It was the 1970, it's been a while. It's been like 40, 50 years. Boulder tried to pass an ordinance and the state preempted it. That's the word we use when the state comes in and takes away the local tools, is called preemption. And so I don't know the year.
I don't remember the year. I think it was in the 90s, and then the Telluride decision was in 2000.
And that was national. It wasn't just here in this state, because our ex-governor became part of the presidential party then, and he put that on board, and we did not vote for the rent freeze to be exempt.
That is correct. It was not a voter initiative. It was done by the legislature.
What do we do to get it back?
There are a number of organizations. I think if you talk to COPA, they can, the Colorado People's Alliance can probably connect you to UNE and some of the other organizations that are engaged in that conversation. So please follow up with her after the meeting.
Okay, sure will. And again, my name is Cassandra Lewis.
Thank you, Cassandra.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll go to the questions on the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Councilwoman, we've also had a request to put our email addresses back up on the screen, so before people leave, they have access to that. So an important question that we've gotten a few times in other forums: will other cities in the metro area follow suit with a proposal like this? And between the 2 of us, we've had a number of conversations with neighboring jurisdictions, with elected officials or staff across the metro area, and in some cases up into the mountain communities. I think we are the city that is closest poised to take action the soonest, and part of that is because we came prepared after the legislative session. A number of the cities around us have fall elections, so they have a November election coming up, and don't yet know what their councils will look like, but the conversations are happening in other communities. We are hearing from some other cities that are considering it, depending on how their elections shake out and the discussions with their own council members. There are some mountain communities and some areas in the Front Range that I think will be taking this conversation up shortly after the election or into 2020. They will not be able to pass the exact same proposal as we've put on the table, because as Councilwoman Kniech has explained, the legislature caps the amount that you can do each year above the current minimum wage. So if they're starting later, they're starting from a lower number than we would be starting from for our proposal. So we do expect conversations to continue around the metro area. We don't know exactly what those will look like.
And why don't you go through any others that you have?
It looks like the others are comments on rent control, which we've already hit on a couple of times.
Okay, sounds good. So I think you might be our last speaker. Come on up, please. Actually, I think I can get to 2. So both of you, and then those are gonna be our last 2 speakers before we close it.
Hi, my name is Darius. I just have a very quick question. I'm very new to this type of deal. I see that you're trying. The whole time that I've been here, we've all been speaking about limitations that local government has, and we all want to do something about it. So I guess my question is, how could, obviously we're on the same side. What more could we as a people do to help you help us, so that it's not just you fighting state government, that we can actually contribute? Because clearly everyone feels very strongly about this. I feel very strongly about this. I'm pretty new to Denver. I'm from Aurora. So just what could we do?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think I want to make clear that we don't not act when the state government throws up limitations. So part of the reason that we raised wages for contractors and employees was because we could. And that was our creativity.
Thank you for that.
Where housing has been limited, for example, on requiring the units on site, as we can't just go to any developer who's not getting any money from the city or getting any land from the city and make them build affordable rental. But where they've needed something from the city, we have gotten large contributions of affordable units. The area where the Elitch Gardens is, for example, if and when that's developed, that development will include 15% affordable housing. It will include housing for the lowest income. It'll include homeownership to build wealth. And so those are things that I just want you to know that we don't not act because of these limitations. We act in different ways. They may be a little less obvious or easy to read about in the newspaper. And so if you're interested in more of that information on what we are doing, I think it is important. Our council, many of our council members have town hall meetings in the evenings. You can reach out to our offices and we can send you more information. We are talking about a whole set of renter protections at a meeting that I'm hosting on Monday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. in the City and County building. I know many of you are working during that time, but we're going to talk about renter policies that we can pass. The legislature did do some things at the request of community and the advocacy of community and cities to help provide folks more days between when they get a notice that their rent is behind and when an eviction is filed. So I think that what I will say is that I hope people leave here tonight with a sense of hope that there are things we can do and there are things that we are doing and that we need to keep doing them. And that requires creativity and it requires sometimes it looking different. It sounds easy to do one sweeping thing. Instead, we're doing 20 very different, very small things that add up. So I think in terms of the legislative piece, I think we as a city always support having more local options. And so, where you can get your voice involved and partner with us, we do partner with some of the organizations. As individual council members, we can take positions on bills. The city as a whole has a formal process for when we take a position. But I think if you want to follow up afterwards, we can connect you to some of the organizations that help sit in that space. But I think that as challenging as the stories that we have heard tonight are, the biggest challenge we face is a lack of hope. Because if we decide that there's no point in coming to meetings like this, that there's no point in passing ordinances because it's not enough, then that's really what threatens our city. Because if we give up and we don't work together and do this hard stuff, we for sure will not be making an impact in people's lives. So I will say that income inequality is serious, but a lack of hope and turning our backs on each other is even a bigger threat. So I say, please, thank you for inviting that question about how we keep doing it. And I hope that if it's not this policy on wages, if it's, transportation or the other things that we're working on, that we leave here believing, and I can show you, we have a rule in my office. If there's not a stakeholder group out there that's interested in holding us accountable on it and engaging, we don't run it. And so every bill that we work on has a community that helped make it happen. And so that, we're here today because we heard from communities about the pain they're experiencing. Whether this is the exact right proposal or not, I don't know. But I want to thank you for your question. I'm going to go to our last person.
All right, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you so much. And then that was more or less almost a closing statement. But all right, question, comment, but short.
I got kind of talked down there. So it's a privilege to own a business. It's a privilege for you to own a business. That's not something that you're given as a birthright. It's not like a certificate for you as an American to have a business. So I want to recognize the fact that a lot of the people who are working for a lot of these small businesses and bigger businesses that are not paying a minimum wage or a living wage, or they are paying a living wage, or they are paying the minimum wage, that they are not compensating people properly for their labor to begin with. And it's hard for people who are working for the minimum wage to even imagine what owning a business is like, much less owning a home. And it's really important that these businesses that are arguing against having a minimum wage being raised, that there are going to be businesses that come in and compete with you and will be paying a minimum wage that is higher, or they'll be paying a living wage that's higher. So if you want to stay relevant, then you go with the current trends. No one wants to work for $11.10 an hour. It doesn't make sense. Adults definitely don't. Kids don't, because they have to provide for the adults in some cases. So I think it's just really important to name that. I also want to say that if you're going to base a minimum wage off of a percentage that doesn't include rent, then you're doing a disservice to everyone that's working for that wage. Rent is 3/4 of the majority of the people's rents, and then including transportation, and then you're including food, and then you're including the bills. So if your percentage does not match my wallet, then your percentage is wrong. It's just not, it just doesn't make any sense. It's null and void, it's invalid. So my hopes for this conversation is that we keep it at 15%, and then you go back and you look at that CPI percentage, and you either scrap it because it doesn't have anything to do with the people of the state of Colorado, because everybody's paying rent, or at least trying to live, with a roof over their heads, and that still requires rent. Or you create something else. The CPI doesn't reflect the people that are in here. Everybody is paying for a roof over their head. It's also kind of ridiculous to ask people not to talk about housing when you're talking about the minimum wage. These are not two separate things. They are not siloed issues. If I cannot afford to pay my rent, then my labor is affected when I go into work. If I cannot afford to live anywhere and I am staying in my car and then going to work, then my labor is affected. If my kids are staying in my car with me, then my labor is affected. It's not a siloed issue. These are all together. So you have to look at the holistic part of this situation. You have to look at it holistically. This doesn't make sense to just tell people to put this on a card and talk about it later. That doesn't make sense. So please, make sure the next time you raise the minimum wage, it's not the CPI that you're using. You're using the actual influx of what that money has to pay for. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you to everyone for coming out, and please do continue to dialogue. I think the emails are still up, and to each of you who spoke and each of you who listened and learned, thanks for coming out. And our next town hall will be next Tuesday at Hiawatha Davis, targeting the northeast part of the city. Thank you.